There have been other trad wives that are going to TikTok to tell their story. Okay, over the past few weeks, I have been sharing the stories of women that were trad wives and how some of them had to restart their lives. Some women were sharing stories here on TikTok. Some women were sharing their stories directly with me. Some people were leaving comments in my comment section. And there have been enough stories to where we're using these as cautionary tales. And no one is saying don't get married, don't have kids. People that are sharing their stories are saying have a plan B because you never know. Now, you see the smile. Because of that, because of me sharing these stories, someone made a whole video of me calling me a grifter, calling me a hypocrite because I happen to be married and I share these women's stories and I use them as a cautionary tale. She called me a grifter. Y'all have got to see the picture that she used of me. And she did it on purpose because she went through all of my videos to gather other videos and screenshots. But she purposely took a picture that was terrible of me while I was speaking, where to make me look bad or something. Let me show y'all the picture she used. Look at this. You can tell I was saying something or I was about to sneeze, but she made a whole video of me, and I purposely did not share her name or anything, but I was just tickled that she called me a grifter and she put my whole name in the title where people could just come over to my page. But because of that, let me go ahead and make another video. When people do this to me, when people want to shut me up for whatever reason, it just makes me want to make more content. Jokes aside, this is serious. Women have got to learn that we need to survive regardless of marital status. Husband or not, we have got to be able to survive. Most of the times, women are the ones that end up with the children. So if you're not thinking about your own survival, think about your children's survival as well. So some of the comments that I've gathered over from my pages: girls, have your own money and be independent. My mom was a teacher and was halfway through paying her own apartment when she met my father. They married and she became a stay-at-home mom at his request. Years later, he goes through his midlife crisis, gets a younger girlfriend, blows all his savings on her, and then dies. My mom has not a penny saved and depends solely on me for survival. Thankfully, I have my education and a good job to provide for her, but she constantly regrets her past decisions, and that is no way to spend your golden years. Wild and Unruly says, part of my education involved medical treatment of women's only shelters. The majority of the women who used this shelter were elderly women whose husbands had not provided for their retirement, widowhood, divorce, in their golden years. They had devoted their entire lives to their husbands and children and now found themselves alone and sleeping in cars or on the streets. As a young mother, my husband and my 16-month-old daughter were involved in a high-speed car accident and left him in a coma for a month, broken pelvis, leg, and arm. He sustained massive TBI and took over a year to get him as close to baseline as we could, but he still suffers from that wreck. The other guy was speeding with his wife and two kids, died at the scene. My neighbor is a widow at 40. Husband used some type of nasal spray for constant sinus infections. Turned out he had a brain tumor and died. She is a widow with 3 kids. Her adult married daughter helps her support her 2 minor children, and her brother moved into their home and helps with the mortgage. She's going to night school to survive. One of my former classmates was married young, and her husband was involved in a tragic accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. She is the primary breadwinner. One of my former colleagues is now the primary breadwinner because her husband became permanent disabled while on the job. He was a gardener with his own business. One day, while mowing, a palm tree branch hit him in the face, and the serrated branch edges blinded him. I'm married going on 23 years, and my children are all grown and gone now. I was determined to have it all because of that first accident. We were poor, and no one came to help us. He was 21, I was 19. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I loved it, but once he was in that coma, no cars, bills piling up, and all his medical issues, We damn near starved. By the grace of God, we survived, and I swore I would never allow this situation to occur again. Once my child was in school, I went back to school. My first degree was in forensics. I joined the Air Force so I could pay for my schooling and did just that. Finished my advanced degree in nursing and only have to work when I need to get my continuing education hours. I was present and did all the mom juggling a mom has to do. If I had to do it all over again, I would wait. I would get my nursing done 2 to 3 years for your advanced nursing degree and 2 to 3 years for your BSN, but you don't have to get your BSN. There are so many places you can work as an RN. You just need to work in the acute care setting for about 2 years and then use that experience to get into jobs that are more conducive to raising a family. But you can find all sorts of certificate or technical schools that can get you into a job that will pay the bills should something happen to your husband. Men are not infallible to accidents, disease, or death. Should something tragic happen to him, how will you and your progeny survive? Being a trad wife is a noble endeavor. That was always my goal, to be at home with my family and husband as much as possible. The schooling and job was a means to an end for me. Now my advanced degree is paying for my homestead life. I work a couple of days to feed my livestock addiction, baby goats, chicks, mini cows. This is amazing. This is an amazing testimony because a lot of these examples, the men didn't just leave, not in all of them, they were hurt. And the woman had to swoop in and become the primary breadwinner. So we need to have these discussions for this particular reason. Broadway Baby says the traditional wife is the life my mom had to live in the 50s and 60s because she had no choice. Pulled out of school at 14 to work to put her brother through college, fired from her managerial position at the end of World War II as the men were coming home and wanted their jobs back. Married to my dad, a man who didn't want his wife to work. My mom felt she was trapped with no way out if she wanted. Plus, my dad's pension and family medical coverage ended when he died. His life insurance covered 1 year of his salary, and my mom didn't qualify for Social Security. Please don't go back to 1954 and 2024. Think of yourself, your kids. You can be a great wife and have a terrific marriage and also be strong and independent. My love to you all. Yes, you can do all of this. You have to think about survival and the just in case. This woman says, I worked as a teller and a woman came in who had been married over 20 years. She was a mess, super unorganized. She stated she was going through a divorce and that she knew nothing, not even how to fill out a deposit slip. She said she had no money and no work experience. She never had to go into the bank. This person says, show them better than you can tell them. Never let your right hand know what the left is doing. Hashtag Jesus said, Jesus said it, hashtag in the Bible. This person says, never mind the fact that a man can easily use your dependence on him as abuse against you and your children, even if he is a good, loving, decent man. What if he were to die suddenly? What if he were in an accident which rendered him unable to provide? This is a situation too many women find themselves in tragically. Having your own resources put aside in case of any unforeseen circumstance is simply common sense. This person says, consider this, even if your husband doesn't leave, what happens if he dies or gets sick? My friend was a stay-at-home mom. Her husband got ALS. Now she's trying to support the family and can't manage. This one, my mom always had a full-time job. My dad didn't want my mom to have a second job. My mom went ahead and took a second job since we had some extra expenses since we had vet bills from our cat. Then a few years later, my dad found another woman and left us. Thank God my mom still kept that second job so we could move because we had to sell our house. My mom was a good Christian woman. Still, my dad left. As women, we never know what's going to happen, so it's always good to have a backup plan. And with that, I'm going to leave it there as far as the comments go. And I'm about to move into I'm a conservative Catholic mom. Trad wives promote unrealistic stereotypes. This is what we are going to get into next. This is the article I want to get into next, an op-ed from Elizabeth Grace Matthew. She says, I'm a conservative Catholic mom. Trad wives promote unrealistic stereotypes. The curation of the trad wife identity among increasing numbers of my fellow mothers raising traditional families troubles me because it pigeonholes our cultural conceptions of manhood and womanhood. Trad wives Generation Z and millennial traditional wives, who are mostly conservative Christians, have proliferated on social media, drawing almost 187 million views on TikTok. They have stoked predictable controversy because of the embrace of old fashioned feminine ideas such as submissiveness to husbands and stay at home motherhood. He says, I'm a wife and mother in what most observers would see as a traditional marriage. My husband and I got married 10 years ago when we were 25 and 26. He is the primary breadwinner. I am the primary caregiver for our three children. We go to Mass every Sunday, send our kids to parochial school, and teach our sons never to hit girls, even if they hit you first. We have no such prohibition on striking back at other boys. Yet the curation of a tradwife identity among increasing numbers of my fellow mothers raising similarly traditional families troubles me because it unhelpfully pigeonholes our cultural conceptions of both sexes. The idea that a woman's place is always in the home is out of touch for everyone except a small cadre of wealthy and overwhelmingly white elites. Women have traditionally earned income to help families. The truth is, women's contribution to economic production is the historical rule, not an invention of the 60s feminism. Before the Industrial Revolution, all but the wealthiest women participated in the primarily agricultural economy. The Puritan work ethic, which valorized labor as godly, reigned for men and women alike. To cast traditional, women's sole focus on domesticity and child rearing is ahistorical. It wasn't until America industrialized in the 1800s and labor moved off farms into cities that middle and upper class white women whose husbands earned enough to support their families began to define ladyhood as synonymous with distance from production. And also, I would like to point out that Black women were never really afforded this role because Black women in this country have always had to work. Also, I want to highlight what this woman looks like in these pictures. She is very, very glamorous, and what she portrays is nothing that is feasible for someone like me who is a mom and a wife and busy. Like I literally I can't get dressed up and look like this, put on a perfect face of makeup every day. It's just not possible. She says, meanwhile, Black women, Irish immigrant women, and poorer white women without financial security to focus their attention solely on homes were excluded from this new definition of femininity. I'm glad this woman said this. By the late 1800s, this distinctly modern ideal of womanhood that captivates today's trans wives was inextricable from whiteness and mass-produced wealth. Trad wife model isn't practical in today's economy. In short, being a trad wife is anything but traditional. It's also not a viable model for marriage or family formation in a nation where women are primary breadwinners in 42% of families and co-breadwinners in 22% of households, and where many men struggle to find professional footing in a post-industrial economy. Let's be for real. Let's be for real. This is not practical at all. If practitioners and proponents of traditional family formation, myself included, actually want to encourage and valorize younger marriage, married childbearing, and larger families in today's world, we need to recognize that fluidity between sexes with respect to primary breadwinning is here to stay, and crucially, that this is in no way erases the biological or psychological differences between women and men, mothers and fathers. My mother was my family's primary breadwinner when I was a small child. She remained my mother and exuded all of the maternal virtues attendant to that role. That my father spent more time with toddler age me did not change this. A dear friend of mine, a feminine maternal woman married to a prototypically masculine paternal man, is her young family's primary breadwinner. Her husband is the primary caregiver and co-earner. By any measure, their arrangement, like that of my parents 35 years ago, is far more traditional than any situation in which one partner contributes little to nothing to the family economically. That both of these women are maternal is altered not at all by their breadwinning status, just as many agrarian matriarchs were, no doubt, both highly feminine and very busy on the farm. Married motherhood and the traditional family are on the verge of obsolescence. That imperils all of our children and the future of the nation. And so this is a picture of the woman that is writing this op-ed, Elizabeth Grace Matthew. And like she said, she is a traditional woman with a husband and kids. And obviously, this woman looks very little like the woman that is highly polished with all her makeup and the pretty dresses making TikTok videos. This woman is probably more like regular women who happen to stay at home and are doing the housewife stuff. She says those of us who value the two parent family should invest in widening its appeal, not doing the opposite by crediting an exclusionary ideal with unearned and impractical merit. She's right in that we need to expand what it's like to be a family. You can look all kind of ways. I have been in fitness gear ever since forever, before my kids were even thought of, before I even met my husband. And that has not changed. I'm always in tank tops and yoga pants, always. And my femininity doesn't look like, with frilly dresses and full face of makeup. It just does not. That doesn't mean that I'm any less maternal to my children. So I want to show you guys a picture that came into my memories from a few years back when my kids were still little. And look what I'm wearing: tights, sneakers, still got my hair down. And this is when, like I said, my kids were very much smaller. Got a whole husband right there. But like I said, our femininity isn't 1950s extra polished. We're just a family. So, go ahead, jump in the comments. Like I said, all of us can look different, and it's perfectly fine to not have that curated look. But be aware that sometimes some families look different. Who's rearing the children looks different. Who's making the money looks different. And we don't have to pigeonhole everybody into a small category. Now, what is even behind the online trad wife movement? And to say a trad wife, that does not mean a stay-at-home mom, because it is two different things. I'm a stay-at-home mom, or was a stay-at-home mom. I am not a trad wife. My being a stay-at-home mom is not rooted in religion. It's just because childcare is just too expensive. Let's talk about this woman, Esty Williams. Esty Williams grew up in a broken household and realized quickly she didn't want to repeat the mistakes of her parents. She says, I didn't grow up traditional, and I think that does play a big part in my decision to move towards this lifestyle. I grew up in a very hectic household, and my parents got divorced when I was younger. Williams watched her mother work all hours of the day and then come home and cook and clean for her family. I just knew I didn't want to be that wife or mother that went to work full time and came home and still had to do the cooking and cleaning. I really admired different families around me who had more of a traditional mother at home doing these things. So she jacked in her college degree and adopted the stay-at-home lifestyle at the behest of her electrician husband. At the same time, she decided to document her life on TikTok, bedecked in plaid dresses with the Marilyn Monroe-like blonde bob. The 24-year-old now has 83,000 followers on the app, a good number of whom seem to hate follow her. And like any good mainstream media sensation, Williams has transcended TikTok. She's become the face of the app for those on Twitter who don't spend any time on TikTok, thanks to people reposting the videos. Like I said, this is a 24-year-old woman, and I'm not sure if she's a mom, but this outfit, this pretty makeup, is impractical for someone like me who is a busy mom. Williams first posted trad wife content on TikTok in July 2022 and has since gone on to give people an insight into her daily life, often to significant criticism from those who point out that it sets women's rights back by 7 decades. She herself admits that she is romanticizing the 1950s aesthetic, but says there's both positive and negative things about the 50s housewife idea. And I'm not hating on this woman. If this is what she wants to cosplay as and make money as an influencer, cool. But as an actual mom and a housewife, and I've been doing this for a while, it's just not practical to me. So I don't look at this. But she's an influencer and she's making that money, and people are going to like, share, comment, whatever. Like I want you to do for me. Jump in the conversation, like, comment, share.